First of all, welcome to our panelists, Ian, Mark, and John. Really happy to have you guys here. We have a really nice public out here. Hopefully today we're going to be able to really define what digital twin is, buzzwords versus the actual. Hopefully we'll have something that we can come out of this with a potential environment of better understanding for the public here that we have, but also even between us and aligning what is really meaning of a digital twin, full life cycle twin, I would say, because I've heard so many people talk about these things, but do we really understand what it is? And so today, my goal is to really get to that point and solidify what do we call it, because we don't want it necessarily just to be a buzzword like BIM became a buzzword. And so at that point in time, I would like to, for each one of you to introduce yourselves, a little bit about your background, what you do, and provide a little bit of scope of what and how you're going to be providing us a little bit more information about digital twin here. So I would start maybe with John.
Okay. Hi, everyone. My name's John Hale. I'm really excited to be here this morning. It's been a while. I used to be at the old Camden events and never a BT event, so thrilled to be here. In my day job, I am, as Boris mentioned, I am the lead for the Real Property Spatial Enterprise team at Department of National Defense, and that team is really all about managing everything spatial and engineering across the asset inventory for National Defense. We have a fairly large asset inventory ranging from the A to Z of every type of asset you can imagine. And my role is mainly on the building side. So sitting here trying to be able to define digital twin and hear the conversation on it is really interesting. It's a real challenge. I also have, I guess I'm double-hatted. I also act as the president for Building Smart Canada, and that was my quest for my day job, to actually be actively engaged in developing and trying to learn what's going on internationally in terms of global standard development to inform, how to implement BIM and now digital twin. So,
excellent.
Mark Cichy. Can you hear me? Yeah, we're good. Principal at HOK, the Director of Design Technology. I work on, I would say, all sorts of different things. Some of the elements are firm-wide as part of our advanced technology group, and then others are major projects related. So at the firm, we kind of split a couple of roles for some individuals. We have major projects, which we kind of classify. It's largely driven by fee, I'd say. And so major projects get their own kind of processes and management criteria, whereas our other projects are kind of supported by local design technology managers. And so my job is to develop some of the strategies for those larger, more complex projects. One of the most important right now being the Center Block project in Ottawa, as well as trying to develop and manage our development resources across the firm and our strategic, let's say, strategies for how we're developing and deploying AI at HOK.
Very cool.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Ian McDermott. I'm the Vice President for Facilities and Capital Development at Sinai Health here in Toronto. Sinai Health is actually two hospitals. It's the Mount Sinai Hospital and the Hannock Bridgepoint Hospital. I have only been with Sinai since January of this year. Prior to that, I spent 27 years at University Health Network, also here in Toronto, so literally right across the street. The portfolio is a responsibility for basically maintaining the buildings, understanding all the space that we have, how it's utilized, not just who's allocated to it, but how is it actually being utilized, understanding all the building assets that we have, so we understand how we're going to manage those assets and replacement of those assets going forward. The hospitals are not so much Hennick Bridgepoint, but certainly Mount Sinai is a Frankenstein of additions, renovations, infrastructure that's in there. And so it's almost a bit of a nightmare to actually try and manage that building. So we need to understand how, from a planning and capital development side, we can actually deal with that going forward. And they've also asked me specifically to come because they want to actually build another research tower, which I'm very excited about being able to do, but have to actually have all the digital tools to be able to do that. And none exist today, which is not atypical.
Very cool. And for myself, I really work in the general contracting business. I do advisory and consultancy. So I work a lot of the general contractors, developers, implementing and changing their business environments to adapt to technology. And so both in Miami and in Montreal here. I'm really happy to be here and entertain this discussion with you guys. I think one of the main things that we want to start with today is from different perspectives. As you can see, you are offering different ways or different lens in the digital twin environment. So it will be interesting to hear from each one of you a little bit the definition that you have from your lens of what an actual full life cycle digital twin is. Because, like we're talking about the word, but what does that in reality mean? What are the requirements to qualify for a full life cycle digital twin? And maybe to kick it off a little bit, I would start with Ian, because we did have a little bit of a conversation before. So I would like to hear you starting a little bit on your definition. Everyone will have about 7 minutes to kind of discuss and go over what for them, through their lens, it is. And obviously, I would like to have maybe you guys participate as well once you've heard some of the definition to provide your definition of what a digital twin from your perspective. So I'll take probably 1 or 2 people to kind of provide that aspect from the public. So with that said, let's start with Ian, and I'm really curious to hear how that would go.
Yeah, thanks, Boris. Not to try and compress like years of work into 7 minutes, but we'll try.
Yeah.
So I think first off, the concept of digital twin is something that is put out there as this utopian sort of master digital copy of everything that you potentially have, and saying, this is what I want. And I don't think it's quite there, because that's something that's going to evolve and be created over a period of time. But what does it mean? So first off, data. Data has to be what you need in order to be able to make informed decisions in pretty much anything. And that data has to be clean data. It can't be a series of spreadsheets that are duplicated, that have inaccurate from one spreadsheet to another. Can't be a series of PDF files. Because those aren't tools that you can actually realistically use. And so from a planning perspective, and I'm sort of going to walk through the cycle of being, what we need to do. So from a planning perspective, in a healthcare facility, we actually, or in the research world, a laboratory world, we actually need to be able to plan a facility based on a whole series of standards. So in healthcare, it's the Canadian Standards Association. There are some sustainability standards, but they're not mandated. The Canadian healthcare standards are actually mandated. On the research side, there are some mandated stuff, but not a lot. So it becomes really inconsistent in terms of what you need to get to. So I'd like to see us have consistent planning in terms of our design. But that's really nice, because it's just a snapshot of a design that doesn't really tell me today, in the world of a integrated hospital with, as I said, Frankenstein, how am I actually going to be able to implement that design? So I actually need to be able to understand what's the constructability of that? Not just here's an image and a snapshot of what it looks like Whether it's a 3D model, that still isn't going to help me because I need to be able to understand how am I actually going to construct it. So from the construction side, it's what is in fact the process flow to actually do all of that, and to be able to take the design and be able to implement it inside an existing hospital, or for that matter, even in a new building, but inside an existing hospital is where we usually have our nightmares. And we can't impact patient care. So you can imagine if now I'm going to start doing construction and I don't understand when I need to shut something down, whether that's going to turn off a ventilator to a patient, that is not acceptable. And so we don't have the data historically from old plans or what was actually constructed. So now I want clear plans. I want a construction path that tells me exactly what you're going to do, how you're going to do it, and what you're going to be putting into the building. What are the widgets? What is required for that widget? And that then has to be integrated with the facilities team who are actually going to maintain it. Can they actually get access to maintain it, which we can only understand if we understand how it's been designed and constructed, and that we actually understand the information that comes from the contractor, who generally is the one that's actually able to put forward, say, here's the widget that we're suggesting, and then we actually end up having to select it. That then goes into, the facility maintenance, who then have to maintain it, and that data has to actually be forward. Now I need sensors on that widget to know whether it's actually performing. I need to understand lifecycle information related to that. When do I have to replace it? Well, when I have to replace it, so I go back to my planning team and say, now you've got to replace it, but do I even have a path to be able to do it? Do I know what technology I'm going to need in the future? Well, today we're missing all of that information. And so what we actually need to be able to do is take all of that data, put it into digital tools that are integrated. They're all different systems: planning, construction, facilities, capital renewal planning. They are all different systems today. They need to actually be integrated and be using data consistently from one place to another. Overlay that with, oh, by the way, the standards say this is what it is today, and they're going to change in the future. So I need to be able to have a path to integrate the standards. But that's what I'd love to do, and that's where we're going to go.
Okay. Well, this sounds like really the vision, right?
Yep.
But obviously, I mean, today in today's world, I mean, we talked a little bit about it before. We're not there. Like we're not there. And so when defining the digital twin life cycle, there is a lot of players involved. And how do we put the accountability to those players at the different stages of the life cycle will be something important. And I think I'm going to come back to this a little bit later, because it has to deal with contract terms, it has to deal with RFPs, it has to deal with how do we put the necessary mechanisms in place to be able to have that through the whole life cycle chain of having a digital twin. So I think that will be something important.
Okay.
And I think I'll come back to that one. And maybe Mark, you can provide your lens on digital twin.
Yeah, I was like itching my neck in anticipation. So watching text messages too come up on my watch, like people know me. So I was thinking about this because the design and construction process is an evolutionary thing. I wouldn't call it revolutionary, I'd call it evolutionary. So, the way that design happens is iteratively, whether it's, like actual architectural design, whether it's engineering, and even through construction, you still have things like design assist. Why is he talking about like construction process? You asked me about something else. I think what it comes down to is the evolutionary intelligence of creating a physical entity, right, is one part of it. What we seem to focus on a lot today is the back end, which is something that gets built and needs to be owned and operated, right? So that, of course, that's probably where the highest value exists for a SANE owner, because there's a massive capital investment, and so you want to ensure that you're proactive instead of reactive in terms of the operational efficiencies of that asset you've just spent a significant amount of money on. What people tend to forget, though, through that process is that there's so much work that's happened up front and so many other decisions that lead to the outcome of monitoring, that there are ways that you can think of monitoring not just through like the literal sense sensor reporting, contextual atmospheric data, but also the decisions that were made throughout that process, right? So tracing that entire decision tree and that path. And you made a great point there, where you're talking about not having pre-existing means of tying in information. It comes back to standards, comes back to siloing, vendors wanting to own data formats, locking people into things. It's a big mess of stuff, right, that we need to solve. And there are organizations out there that are doing that are looking into a minimum set of rules or minimum viable standards that kind of declare things like let's say ISO 19650 that we were talking about earlier, to say like, here's what you should have, right? But a lot of these things forget about the procedural steps that go from client or owner hires somebody to create or design something, whatever that procedural mechanism is, whether it's design build or P3 or what have you, there's a contractual obligation there that then takes that thing to reality. But it's, and I talk about this amongst other groups, is that we've lost all of the decision-making elements that contribute to a verticalized process in construction. It's that interstitial value space where that information in conjunction with live data actually, and then AI, will actually help us fundamentally understand and allow buildings to actually think with contextual information as to, again, like I said, proactively, but also reactively, in the sense that, like, what do I do in these situations? Well, I have the information, right? If you don't have the information and you can't prepare a context model, you're screwed.
Correct.
So.
Yeah, so basically, for you and the way that we look at this, between Ian and yourself, you come to the same conclusion. It's about data operability. It's about contractual mechanisms. It's about early involvement of people working together. At the end of the day, in order to be able to use even AI that you're mentioning, we need to have the basic structure put in place with the right data in place in order to be able to do anything. So that would kind of sink into what John, about standards and the mechanisms around digital twinning, and how do we make that as a whole to be able to put together that base model, if you wish, of what is required. So in terms of standard, from your lens, I know you're also looking at it from the lens of an owner, but it would be interesting to really hear on the standard side and the digital twin. What is digital twin for you in your thinking?
It's I think I know less now than I did 10 minutes ago. It changes daily. I think what I know is we need to define it, and we need to define it for Canada. And saying that, like, I'm taking a very macro view. I've been working with the Department of National Defence in receiving BIM and trying to get BIM implemented on projects, and doing open BIM on projects and implementing 19650. And still, at the end of the day, it's very hard to be a knowledgeable owner to understand, hey, we're doing BIM, but BIM is now just part or a foundational piece of digital twin. And you have to, like, just giving kind of, looking what Mark is saying, like, the onset of AI, IoT maturing, and the thrust of cloud technologies, and together with BIM and GIS integration, our ability to adopt and move to digital twin is really heightened. And from a Canadian government perspective, we recognize that it's a really strategic thing for us to aim for, but still there's a lot of obstacles. And unfortunately, recently we're really forced looking at how Canada has to address the need for data sovereignty and technology sovereignty around that. So being open is very important as well. I think standards, after saying that, standards are really critical. Looking at it from a couple different perspectives, like at National Defence, we have 20,000 odd normal buildings, and then we also are now inheriting about 4,000 Coast Guard assets, and we have to manage those. So when I think digital twin in that context, digital twin has to encompass our whole inventory. And also, you know, our infrastructure, our buildings, our land, our improvements to land. And then on top of that, we have to consider each one of those locations that we operate out of that other people have digital twins. Or we might be doing digital twins for a part of it. Maybe we're doing it for carbon reduction. Maybe we're doing it for energy analysis, but we have to have the flexibility to be able to work with others and share data in that context. So data management becomes a really big part of it. So I personally, like, I'm waiting for someone to kind of, you know, stand up and tell us, like, how do you do data management? How do you, for in this context? And I think it's a little bit of everything. I think there's opportunity for, you know, obviously going very object-based, picking the right data schemas. The ISC schema is very interesting to us. We're also tracking City GML, the Inspire model in Europe, but there's a pile of them that kind of go together that we're not quite there yet. So that's structured object data. We have to look at, you know, better managing our unstructured data, getting our point clouds and LiDAR data managed as well. And then be able to provide that data in context that you can draw services from. To me, that's really where digital twin really comes alive. So from a standards perspective, there's quite a few things still there. And then on, you know, if we really, you know, as we're talking earlier, going more on the performance side, life cycle model, I think there's other standards out there as well. Like I'm keenly interested in the asset administration shell, looking at how do you connect, you know, the actual technology, you know, across the board to your virtual objects. So there's a lot to learn still, and I'm really looking to this room to actually, you know, carry on that conversation and look towards, you know, getting something set for Canada.
Right. So do you think, just a quick question like this, do you think like there will be eventually a mandate coming out of Canada that would basically provide that mandate for all of this, or are we just daydreaming here?
I think it's a daydream. Personally, I don't think we're very unlike like the European Commission and Union. They have many countries all thinking kind of, you know, on the same kind of level. We're a very federated model here in Canada. We have the federal government, the provincial, municipal, all having kind of roles in mandate. And I can really, I want to give a shout out to my colleagues, Farzad from NRC and Arash. They're very active in looking at on their decarbonization and construction challenge program, actually looking at IFC as part of and a model-based deliverable to do a carbon check. That really tips off that, hey, at some point we're going to be receiving a model and as part of a deliverable that we then harvest, and that really forms a basis for digital twin for us. So actually, you know, that to me, that's the start of a mandate. Now, hopefully there's others soon.
Okay. So essentially we're thinking that we might get to that point, but we're not there yet, for sure. Like and what do you think? Do you think that that's something like that might happen, Mark or Ian? Like what you're thinking?
I just wanted to add though that so although not mandated, and the U.S. is more kind of like the Wild West to this degree, is though that I am seeing for major infrastructure and healthcare projects in the U.S. is that clients are starting to now ask us in contract for a model as a deliverable, and that it's not it's becoming significantly less unique in many of those large capital expenditure sort of critical infrastructure scenarios where we are being asked to sign off certain levels of LOD or certain type elements and marks included within the model, certain hierarchies and structures, components, groups, these sort like they're educating themselves more robustly, the clients are rather, in understanding what they need from us and asking us to contractually commit to it, which I think is important.
Right. Oh, absolutely. It is important. Now, to what level is of understanding? Because, you know, I've seen contracts where the definition of those contracts are yes to a certain degree, but not to what we're talking about here. You know?
And certainly all proponents are not executing equally.
Exactly. And that is what I'm seeing in the industry
and he's
too.
A politician.
But in the general contracting business, if you look at it from that lens, I would tell you what I'm hearing and what I'm seeing in the ground, where people are not ready. They have a very difficult time understanding what actually that means. And they've been asked to do BIM, they've been asked to do all sorts of things, but you really look at a typical general contractor in the mid-market, a lot of except obviously the big players that have a good structure of a team, of a technology team, not just an IT team, because that's what's required in order to have structured data and having the proper data management sets in order to be able to structure all of that. You need to have a proper team in place. And most of those general contractors or others are not necessarily having the money invested in that technology group inside their organization to do that. So that's kind of where the difficulty lies in terms of technology adoption to even get to proper BIM practices or to get to proper digital twinning. And I'm curious to hear, Ian, on your side, what would you say about that particular?
Yeah, so two things. One, going back to the standards.
Yeah.
I don't think you're ever going to get a mandated national standard for Canada. John sort of alluded to it. We have provincial requirements, we have federal requirements. In the world of healthcare, you're not going to get federal requirements on the healthcare. You'll get guidelines, right. And then it'll be up to each province to say whether or not you actually have to apply to those. So it's going to be a long time before we ever get there, and at best we'll get a guideline. Mm-hmm. But I think it comes back to the question of what are people asking for, right? So sadly, I hate to admit it, but on the healthcare side of the world, I have colleagues who have absolutely zero understanding of what digital technology, never mind a digital twin, could be used for. So just turn around and say, hey, here's a standard, and now you have to build to this standard, when the owner doesn't understand what they're actually asking for or how they would use any of that data, it actually makes no sense whatsoever. So, I think we have a lot of education to do for a lot of people, including owners. But I think fundamentally and you talk about sort of mid-sized construction companies not sort of having the background with the tools. I also don't think they have the background in terms of understanding the why we even care about it.
Correct.
And so, we had talked earlier about it. I think what it really boils down to is a much more collaborative approach between owners, designers, call them regulators, constructors, to be able to say, what's our end goal on lifecycle management as a whole? What's the end goal? What are we trying to do? What are we trying to achieve? And from an owner perspective, I'm saying also the operator. If they're not the operator, then you have to have whoever the operator is at the table. Mm-hmm. What are we trying to achieve here in the long run? And in the long run is we need to actually understand all the information about the building so that we can provide whatever it needs to be that has to happen inside. On the healthcare side of the world, it has to be so that patient care is not interrupted. You cannot risk, I hate to say it, but it happens when you don't understand the buildings, you don't understand how it was constructed, you don't understand how it was designed, and you're in the middle of surgery and the system goes down, that patient is immediately at risk. You would not want to be the patient on the table when the power goes out and nobody understands how the power actually went out and what to do. And that's what happens. And we need to change that. But the contractors who are actually putting in the electrical systems don't necessarily understand that.
Correct. Exactly. And so just to sum up our discussion here up till now to this point, I heard a lot of data.
Yep.
So basically data management, a big aspect. I heard a lot of early collaborative efforts. So I referred that always to IPD collaborative efforts into contracts. I refer to also what you were mentioning about how education is absolutely critical at all levels. And I think, how do we educate all of the masses? That is the key here, because in order to really create that environment, we need to have a proper educational mechanisms to get them to that point. and all starts to the end of the row of who actually is the person that builds, because they need to understand the end goal of what we're trying to do and what is that information going to be used to, not just for the delivery, but also for understanding what it will be used for later and how. So I think from all of this, in order to sum up some of those contractual, education, data management, all of these are the key components, if you wish, if we're to really define digital twin, that need to come before all of that. But I'm really curious to hear about the public and where maybe if there is anybody in general here in the public, if you're part of a organization, or if you have a comment about what in your organization you guys define digital twin, or if you have started anything in terms of digital twin environment. Anybody in the public here that can talk a little bit about that, or if you guys have any starting points?
I'm picking on the bald guy over there.
Uh-oh. All right.
You got him in.
And feel free to interact with the group here as well and ask questions directly to them.
So Brett Melvin, Turner Fisher, representing it too, so come see us at Digital Twin. For us, it was what Digital Twin is about, and it's not a digital record. So we have designs, a lot of good stuff, but that's not digital twin. So it's the binding of elements to something in the physical form, and to create that binding link to whatever performance-based data that we wanted to achieve and visualize through the lens of the twin. In our digital team, we have a facility manager that's part of our team. So the why came from the facility manager. And then we had to basically digest what do we want to do, because there could be many things. So we took a couple of things and we achieved that, and now we'll do more things. So that was the perspective we took. And for us, it was at a micro level. So it was our studio, we're the owners, we're the operators, we were the designers, we had nothing. So we had written through the whole list. So how do you now maximize that to a much more macro scale? So we want to bring it to our clients. How do you bring it to your clients? How do we bring it to the government in Canada? How do we bring it to the civil dimension? And interested to hear thoughts on that.
Scaling is not easy.
That's true, but it's a little more than that.
Well, I mean,
I'm here to say that.
how technical do you want me to get? Like, I mean, that's what I'm saying. Like, this could, but that is one of the major hurdles, is the technical scaling of a really complex problem with a lot of live information being fed into a system. The other one is a high level kind of response, I would say, is like, I would ask yourself, what do you really need, right? Because it's one thing to ingest, it's another thing to consume.
Correct.
Entirely, right? It's just, and you know, like, I don't want to come back to AI again, but I mean, what you can consume with AI is something that never sleeps and stops breathing, whereas as a human being, you need contextually aware information, right? So it's what decision or reaction do I need to make based on the data that's available to me, right? Whereas you can run all sorts of scenarios in the background, you know, if there's like no human engagement, and just have a thing going through that. But again, like I was saying, it's like I could get like deeply technical into scaling and server infrastructure and talk about like, but I'm not going to go there because you asked me not to. But I can if anyone wants to talk to me afterwards. But I do really think like high level what it is, and I guess if we agree to Brent's point that he just made there, where he was kind of very like hyper-focused on how he defined, you know, that term. I'd say if everyone can agree, that's probably maybe accurate, because we have names for a lot of different elements that need to connect to one another that don't currently, because we have no way of really plugging them in universally. But if we can say that the record model is a thing, and it's not necessarily, you know, critical that all of the stuff I actually said earlier, if I just like pick on myself for a second to say it's that process element as well that completes it, it may not be actually. For what I said before, if I maybe correct myself, is that maybe that provides the context by which you analyze and consume. And the digital, but I'm not going to say it. those words, that whatever it's called, right, if it is hyper-focused on operational data, then that's what it is, right? And then maybe you don't call it something vague, it is very explicit, like it is an operational tool.
So this goes back to, again, what do you call real digital twin versus actual operational data? If you're to segment it in that way, then it's really about the data and what use of that data you're going to do. Because at the end of the day, that it goes back to that.
Yeah, and I mean, really, you want to be able to have that information, and I think this comes back to, like, for me personally, it always comes back to owner. Because if, as an owner, and I mean, you guys both know this, right, from your own perspectives, is that if you are not, if the individual or the body that is responsible for paying for or providing the requirements to kind of consume and occupy an asset does not stipulate what they want, you will get garbage. I mean, that is a universal truth.
Absolutely.
So I think you can do like mandates all day long and it won't make a difference. But if the people that actually have to live with the thing and pay for it stipulate exactly what they want and understand what they're asking for, then we will start to get greater consistency. We'll develop a language and a knowledge base that people will be able to work within, and things will begin to work themselves out. But that's really hard because they're focused on their business, and this other stuff is seen as outside of that business.
Absolutely agree. Absolutely agree. What about any other perspectives or things that you guys are doing in your organizations in terms of digital twin? It's a little bit higher.
Yeah, I'm mostly, just in case of mirror, I'm a little bit confused with definition because firstly we call it 3D model, B-model, Navis. Now we have to switch to digital twin probably. But I'm from the company in networking and EBC. So we create digital twin model. Firstly, with existing facility, it's after we build the model in different departments. Now working with steel and concrete. And we put the data, like everything in the model, but you can just pick and see what is the material. And it's not just a beautiful picture, 3D model. It's actually necessary for the procurement because we can take a bill of materials and order everything. We use let's say different color coding that project manager can see what is the stage of the different area. If it's just something dropped to book a room and something would be here, or that is progress, or it's almost finished the design, or it's like built already. We also like book a space again for the future development from the client. Maybe it will be not us, just have a vision. And it's mostly like everything from my side, from the design team. But as I said, for the client, he got all this information, and the most important, I think, if he gets everything, he will be just thinking it out, because a client doesn't need to know what kind of column is it, because like it's too much. And I think the most important thing is make it user-friendly, because most of the time, nowadays we use cell phone or maximum like iPad. No one needs to open like a powerful computer to see the model like digital twin walking through the visual building. And actually I forget to mention what's really cool how company use nowadays. It's like, visual glasses, like you actually can walk through the not existing facility and see how it will be like in a month, in a year, and you can, it's just like some technical feature, but you can actually like use like layers to see how it will be. Yeah, I think it's, from one side it's pretty cool, but I just got the thought while I was listening to you. Probably our like parents was so excited to get the computers that all our drones will be like live forever. But like in the 20 years, we got the like 3D models. Now we're talking about digital twins, and who knows what will be like in 40 years. Maybe again, like we will think what we will live with it forever, but it's actually like we will jump ahead and we don't need it in the future. I don't know, just my thought. But this is like how our company works, and like my clients, it's actually like a 3D model with all data, but it can be extracted there.
Yeah, so basically what you're creating at PVC is a centralization of the data for the construction side, and all of that data basically is potentially usable and structured at that point for operation and maintenance, but the client potentially is not even yet at the education level to know what exactly they wanted to do with. Yes, okay.
Just a couple points. That was really interesting hearing that perspective, and to Brent's perspective as well. As an owner scale of national defense, it's
an exciting period of time because we have a lot of capital construction happening, but the ability to harvest information from the project process and apply ISO 19650, we've done a lot of work around defining the project information requirements and model to be a more educated owner, but we also understand that to really do life cycle digital twin, we need the asset information model, because we're taking that project information, and as Brent was saying, there's a lot of other things that we're doing in the FM side that you just don't get or don't really care about from the project side and the construction side. They're all important. We want to maintain it as a record, but to really go into that environment as a digital twin, we want to understand the building, how it functions, the energy consumption, how it's being used, and I think it's a challenge to go across an inventory of 20,000 buildings and go, okay, we're going to do digital twin on all these, but we're only doing maybe 50 to 100 projects any given year, and being received to be able to really go to that higher end state. So to baseline what a digital twin is, it's a little underwhelming. We have to go back and look at what can we achieve, and I think there is an opportunity to go in there and do a lot of reality capture. I think there's a really good opportunity with some of the technologies I've seen, especially here today, to go and do reality capture, get a model built up to a certain level that you can start doing what Brent was describing, and also receive that project information and do something with it.
No, absolutely. I mean, yeah, Ian.
So interesting perspective on digital twin, and it's not wrong. It's just a different way of looking at it. So this idea of creating a three-dimensional where you can use VR goggles to actually understand what's actually been designed before it's actually constructed or before you finish design, absolutely something that we've seen used in healthcare design activity, and it's been enormously helpful to understand, particularly in places like OR where technology is changing so much right now. Physicians, nurses, doctors, they don't understand the world of design, they don't understand the world of construction or maintenance. What they understand is they have to work in that space. So that digital twin of what's being designed, where they can go in there, in a virtual reality world and say, or wait a minute, I don't have enough space here, this is not the right place there. Absolutely hugely valuable, and would be fantastic, but in my mind, it's one of the elements, which is great, but it's part of the total conversation.
Visualization.
I was gonna say, for me, it is not a twin in any way whatsoever. That's my process. As a designer, and architect, engineer, my process, and I think my responsibility as a delivery to the client is to allow them to put themselves in that space before they just experience it so that they can understand what they're getting and they can give feedback on what the outcome should be.
Correct.
Right. Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
People use different perspectives of what that is.
Well, I see that we're kind of getting into noon. We don't want to hold you back for the kitchen and for having something to eat. But I don't know
If you guys have any final words on the digital twin or the definition, but that would be the time. Any final words?
I mean, the only thing I would add is I would say that it's one part. It's a very important and critical part of a much larger conversation that needs to happen around how we manage and exchange information. That this organization is like heavily involved in other organizations like Building Smart, and that we should never stop ever having or be complacent with the current state of that conversation, because it can always be advanced.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you to the team that organized this, to actually put this on the agenda and to continue to talk about it. I think at every opportunity like this, we need to keep talking about it until we get to that point where we have a much broader understanding of what the options and possibilities are.
Absolutely. I think we did a good stride today, but obviously, as you can see, different of opinions, people have different understandings. Hopefully in the future, we'll be able to bring everybody together into the same level of understanding, and we'll be moving forward. Thank you very much, everyone, and hope you guys enjoyed this little panel, and thank you guys for being here.
Thank you.